recording now. And logistics, please, working group members, name yourself in the Zoom with WR in front of your name. And we ask that everyone speaks one at a time. Please raise your hand to participate, and I will call on folks in order. We have David Tabor here will be doing the presentation. Phil Williams, one of the other members of the drafting team, is here as well to respond to questions.
And Jim, I think you meant WG, not WR.
I am sorry. Thank you, Mike. WG for working group. And I'll be capturing notes from this meeting, and we'll share the presentation and recording on the website as is general practice for the working groups. And I ask that you provide comments in the provide comments by speaking rather than putting them in chat. And just a reminder of the group that has been working on the work product. We have the drafting team of David Tabor, Phil Williams, and Kristen Peer. And then the core team, which has been reviewing the work product, of Nicole Whipple, Brenda Tamaris, Matt Clifford, and Adrian Garialdi. And also wanted to thank Sam Bowen-Bryan for his technical review and input on the product. And with that, I will turn it over to David. And David, I will cede the screen share to you.
Cool. So while that's happening, first of all, thanks everybody for taking the time. This is an unusual request of all of your time. I'm going to assume that this really is a continuation of Monday's conversation. So I'm not going to go over slides we went through then, unless there's an important change or an important question that we need to discuss amongst us. That way we can cover all the slides that we didn't see on Monday. And obviously, if you either have new consternation or new information about one of the original slides, sure. But I'm not going to, other than that, I'm not going to hit any of them. Hopefully that's okay with everyone. And with that, there's been a lot of changes as a consequence of our conversation Monday. So I want to highlight a couple things just so you know. We decided to add some iconography because there's a lot going on in this presentation. So in the upper right corner, we're trying to give people sort of here's where you are in the discussion reminder. Now, the exact iconography will change, but we found that outlines don't help any because no one can remember the outline once you've gone through a couple of slides. So this is just a little trick just to give you context of where are we? What are we talking about here? So that's something that you'll see on each slide. We're happy to change what is in the little blurb here. Obviously, there's not much room to put a lot of meaning, but we're just trying to put some signposts in. So we have an interesting item to discuss that we went around quite a bit on this on Monday. And this is, what do we call this thing? That is to say, what's shown on the map. There was a lot of discussion about water transfers versus diversion, interbasin versus transbasin. We want to keep the character count down so that we don't take the whole page up just with the noun of what we call this thing. The only place where I have religion is transbasin versus interbasin, because transbasin conveys in normal English that you're within a single basin, where the transfer actually is across basins. And that's the only place I have a little bit of religion. As far as whether we call it diversion, water transfer, or something else, I'm easy. But it would be great if we could kind of decide that in discussion. And obviously, all of these are terms of art. Diversion means a couple of things. Water transfer, I'm sure, has some legal significance. But again, we're thinking of the general public. What will they be able to perceive and go with? So with that, I'll shut up and let's have a discussion.
Okay, we've got a couple of hands up. Go to Adrian first.
I think in other documents, it's always referred to as an interbasin transfer. Maybe others will have some input there.
Any other notes on that? Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, it is a term of art, but is there anybody here who works with the water board or is a water lawyer who can tell us what it actually should say? Otherwise, I'll go with interbasin transfer.
Right. Request for a opinion from one of the attorneys in the room.
Well, this is Phil Williams. I'm an attorney. Interbasin makes sense to me from a definitional standpoint.
Okay.
And is transfer okay, or is that too loaded?
Well,
I don't think so.
It's a transfer.
Okay. Dawn, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
I would,
I'm always good for plain English.
I would suggest it's actually an import. Transfer has a very specific definition in water rights and at the division of water rights. So, transfer is very specific, and this isn't a transfer; it's an import.
Is everybody else cool with that?
So it's interbasin water import. Can everyone live with that? Interbasin water import?
Yeah, for lack of a better term, I can live with it.
Cool. We come to agreement. Oh my God, not that. And then just a point of fact, I've seen various dates, and I don't know what date is actually the right date to put for the operational beginning of Lake Mendocino. Anybody know?
Yeah, Lake Mendocino started to fill in 1958.
Okay, so that is a reasonable number. Okay,
Great.
cool.
Thanks, Don.
Appreciate it. Let's see. Now we moved a bunch of things around, not that you knew the order, but we decided to move this slide as far as what are the existing demands up front as what we're calling context. This is essentially background. And yes, this can change, but this is simply a statement of fact. I do want to, if we can, there was a lot of interesting discussion around, golly, what are we calling riparian here? Are those actually riparian water rights? And this is taken from a Sonoma Water document, or is this actually riparian agriculture, ET, etc., that this is sort of natural use of the water that doesn't go to humans? Anybody know?
Yeah, that's the demand of the riparian vegetation corridor adjacent to the Russian River.
Okay, so that really isn't riparian water licenses or permits. And we also assumed under that stipulation that the riparians were categorized as either agricultural use or M&I use. This is the 2019 document on the economic value of water. Is that a fair assumption as well? That that the riparian water rights were categorized according to those two buckets?
That's correct.
Oh, yay.
Okay.
Correct twice in one day. This is unusual.
Great. And Don, would it be any problems with just saying riparian vegetation there? Is that a adequate clarification?
That would be fine.
Great.
And again, as an issue of fact, do we know that it actually was a snapshot of just 2019, or is this some composite of years? This is in that economic value report.
That was from 2019, I believe.
It was. Okay, so it is a single year snapshot. All right. And sorry to keep quizzing you. We can't seem to find a an idea or a reference of wet year, dry year, normal year. What is the frequency across 10 years? What we had seen someplace, but we can't find a reference, is that wet years were about 4 out of 10, and the dry years were like 4 out of 10 as well. Is anybody know where to find that information?
Well, that's a math problem. On average, 50% will be drier than average and 50% will be wetter than average.
Right, but we also have the average year and or the typical year, and that's what makes it sneaky.
Yeah, you get into percentiles and such, but
Well, the issue is, what are you comparing it to? As we know, we have climate change going on, and if you're
Right.
comparing things to the historical record, we know that based on climate change, things aren't stationary. So that's a very
Yeah.
difficult question to try to answer, David.
Understood, and particularly looking over the 111-year period, it's almost ridiculous to look at the frequency. But in the climate change modeling that was done for Two Basin Solution, I haven't gone back and read it. I think they actually may have stipulated, here's what we expect the frequency to be. Would that, if I can find it in there, would that be good enough for a pointer going forward?
So in the work we've done with climate change, David, we haven't tried to tease out what's dry, normal, or above normal. Those data sets are just used as the daily input on the hydrology
Right.
and temperature.
Okay.
if you have some projections from that report, future projections, they're label them their future projections, footnote to the source.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find them.
Probably newer models, but they're models. They're projections.
Yep. Okay. Coolness. Thank you for the clarifications of fact. That's very, very helpful.
And David, we have Terry McCartney has her hand up.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Hi, Terry.
Thank you for all this information. I'm really curious about the municipal and industrial 7,000 acre feet for Hopland Reach. Where is that number coming from? Because it's like so much higher than other reaches. And Hopland, I'm trying to think of what could possibly be industrial in that area. And I know the township does not have that large a population. I'm just curious where that number came from.
Yeah, this is a counterintuitive thing that the name of the reach is a little sneaky. You'll notice that in that reach, there's the demand from the Ukiah area. And I don't think it's a lot of industrial. I think it's mainly municipal. Again, this is just data that Sonoma Water generated. So, but it is, as I said, it's sort of sneaky that the Healdsburg reach includes, from what I can tell, includes Cloverdale, but the Cloverdale reach does not, which is like, oh, okay.
Well, we should.
This is just reaches, the reach is defined by, the bottom gauge is the name of the reach. So
Right.
David, the Hopland Reach includes the entire Alexander Valley. And so the city of Ukiah and all the county water districts that are up there providing rural residential, Redwood Valley, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay. Don, do you have information on the exact location? I believe these are based on gauge locations, right? Like, does the Cloverdale Reach, is it below Cloverdale?
No, the Cloverdale Reach is between Hopland and Cloverdale. And so
Okay.
that there's not a lot going on there because it's actually, that gauge is well above the city of Cloverdale. It's actually in Mendocino County.
Oh, is it
Okay.
really? Okay.
Okay, we can let's fix the map then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so in all cases, it's by the gauge. And what we need to do then is if the gauge is, pardon me, if the gauge is actually in Mendocino County, we need to make that red zone above the Mendocino County line.
Yeah, I have
I
a note to fix that, David. Got it.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all for those corrections of fact. Any other questions on this? Going. Lower Russian, we're under the impression that that there will be demand estimates for this in the coming months. Is that a true impression?
Don, is that some information that you might have?
I'm not sure we were going to be working on that. I don't know what was discussed earlier this week, whether there'd been a commitment to do that.
Okay,
It wasn't discussed on Monday's call, Don. Yeah, I believe that was in an earlier conversation I had with Mike, said it might be forthcoming, but if it's not, we can work with that too.
yeah. Oh,
We'll
sorry.
have to discuss that, and I can get back to you, Jim.
Okay, thanks,
And
Don.
David.
That'd be great. Thank you. All right. And if the answer is yes, presumably that will be new data, not 2019 data. I'm just guessing. So I want to cross out this 2019 because I doubt you're going to be using old data on that.
You probably would want to use the same data to be consistent with the Upper Russian River, and
It would be
also-
good. Yeah.
And it's also, it's challenging to use. It's not necessarily representative to use the 2020 through 2022 data because it's, we were in the middle of a drought, there were curtailments,
Yeah.
it would be swayed.
Got it. Okay. Well, then we're just going to assume that it will be 2019 data. Cool. Any hand raises here? Okay. As always, we don't have a lot to say about the eel simply because we don't know of any data. We're just be pleased as punch if someone had some actual data here. And so I'm just going to skip these next two slides unless there's a real reason to. Now, we had heard a rumor that there is some demand modeling going on at the state water boards, at least along the main stem. We're not sure exactly what that context is. Can Sam or somebody else confirm that there actually is such a thing, or is that an urban legend?
Hi, I wouldn't call it demand modeling. I'd say we're compiling annual reports to water rights users and kind of doing a little QA/QC. So that compiled.
So this little iconography saying, "Oh, we're going to be able to show you the number of acre feet," sounds like that's not in the cards.
No,
Okay,
it will
excellent.
be by water right, and we won't be calculating riparian vegetative demand.
Okay, so we have to take this off of the graphic because that's a bad promise. Thanks. This is a slide that I'm going to let Phil present because Phil has some nuance he wants to add, I'm sure, and I'll shut up.
Yeah, thanks, David. And I know there's a whole lot of nuance I want to add here, right? But just I think this is fairly straightforward. We're trying not to provide a tome for everybody here, but give a general overview of demand and supply between our two basins. So the general gist, right, folks, is the reality is you may have a water right, but there may not be water against which to exercise that right. And that's frankly one of the points of this presentation is to make sure that the audience hears that. The bottom bullet here, we refer specifically to curtailments. It's a little, again, not trying to get too into the weeds here, but recent experience in the Russian River curtailments where water right users are restricted from exercising that right for any number of reasons, some of which may be the unavailability of source water to support the right.
Any questions about this?
Hey, don't see any hands.
So Phil, I'm going to volunteer
Yep.
you again for the next slide. Shouldn't be many surprises here.
Yeah, so just generally here, and I think everyone here generally understands this, just like with any right that anyone has in this country, and there's always conditions and boundaries on those rights. And so here, what we're trying to communicate is that, water rights don't give the water right holder a carte blanche right to exercise under all circumstances and all events. So there are conditions based on the appropriate jurisdiction about that kind of put boundaries on the exercise of that water right. And again, here we're not trying to get too far into the weeds. We're just trying to give folks a general overview and understanding of the context.
Dawn, please go ahead.
Hey, Phil, could you explain the third bullet? I'm not sure I quite follow that.
Yeah, Don, and I apologize, but I didn't write that bullet, so I'm not sure I can.
So I did. Let me try. The basic idea is that essentially when there's just because there's water in the river, let's say, or water in the resource, doesn't mean you have a right to use it. And as a consequence, the required flows could be all that's in the river. And that means that you, Mr. Water Right Holder, don't have an entitlement to pump it. That's what we're trying to get across. Now, this may confuse, and I'd love better wording.
Well, I liked exactly what you said, David. I thought that was very clear. This makes because the wording here makes it sound like because minimum stream flow requirements are being met, it's somehow making water unavailable for other water right users. So if you could paraphrase almost exactly what you said, I thought that was very clear on what you're trying to mean by that bullet.
Yeah, and Don, I appreciate the question. I think your point here is a good one.
So we'll mess around with the wording on that. Thank you for that input. And Phil, I'm going to volunteer you again.
Yeah, so I'll be careful here. I don't know if we have anyone that specializes in this law, but generally under law, namely stemming from the Winters decision from the Supreme Court, when the United States, oh yes, ma'am. Brenda, thank you.
I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I did have a chance to communicate with Erica Costa a little bit, and she did suggest that maybe it would be helpful to cite a couple of the cases like Winters, just to make it clear so that we're kind of not just going off the tops of our heads.
Yeah, Brent, I think that's a great comment. I think citing directly to the law avoids a lot of potential difficulties. And so do we want to say the Winters Supreme Court decision, or is there a better name? Well, David, I think maybe, and Brenda, ma'am, you're part of the drafting team. Maybe we can just kind of work on some finessing some language here in the next couple of days.
Yeah, just use the legal site so people know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I'll also put in ref documents, because we have a page at the end that has all kinds of pointers off to people who want to do additional reading. Thank you on that. I want to make sure that people are comfortable with that phrasing. I'm given to understand that it isn't always the most senior of all water rights, but that it may be. Is that a good understanding, or is that mangled?
No, I think that's pretty accurate.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Go ahead.
And then I hope that this puts a smile on your face.
Yeah.
And the only thing that, again, getting away from the legalisms, but just to the general public, this casts doubt. Is that the intention?
Well, being that it's not that the reserved rights have not been adjudicated, it's the quantification of them.
Ah,
To say have not been quantified is accurate.
Right.
I mean, as far as I know, the whole Russian River has been not adjudicated.
Exactly. Yeah.
so if we do that, I'm going to say formally qualified, formally quantified.
Formally, yeah.
If
Yeah.
that's all right. And
Yeah.
that allows us to get rid of that. Font,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
like.
Mm-hmm.
Fair?
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on this?
No, but I will be talking with Erica a little later. So if I get any comments from her, I'll let everybody know.
That's great. Thank you.
Great.
Mhm.
Thanks a lot, Brenda.
Okay.
Great. Don't see any other hands? Yeah, go ahead.
One more for you, Phil. Actually, let me present this one because there's too many changes, too many surprises. So we did go over this, but what we've done is to give people a little more context. On the Russian River side, you can see the parenthetical numbers. That's the number of rights that exist within each of those categories. And then you'll notice that there's colors in the columns and the column headings. Because there's different colors of water, we're actually going to try to use consistent colors throughout the report. We didn't change the table entries. We just tried to introduce this notion of, hey, there's different colors of water, and just because you see water doesn't mean you get to use it. Any issues here? I don't see any hands. And I apologize, I didn't get this slide finished. What this is meant to say is have above the no trans-basin transfer scenario, the words scenario 3 and scenario 2 here. And again, we'll fix the word from trans-basin transfer to what it means to be, but we want to keep reminding people, this is the definition of the scenarios. Sorry I didn't get that done. Other than that, I don't think we made any changes here, other than changing the word a to the word the down here. Oh, we also changed this. We just wanted to get away from the word decommissioned because only a water nerd knows what that implies. I'm happy to change that to something in plain English if there's something better.
Any comments on that or okay with that wording? Okay,
Cool.
back to you, David.
I don't think there's any changes here, but we didn't go over it, and I want to make sure people are comfortable with this.
Don.
I would suggest you also add that the wet year, that not only they're going to be wetter, but they could be much more condensed when the wet periods occur. So you kind of have this longer dry periods, but the wet periods will be condensed into a shorter wet season.
Ooh, that's interesting. Shorter wet periods. So they're more intense, which means, unfortunately, more wastewater. Is that a good way of saying it?
I would say water that's more difficult to capture in those condensed periods, kind of like what we saw in 2023,
How about more intense wet period, harder to capture? That a good way of saying it?
Well, I mean, I would say the actual wet periods are going to be condensed into fewer months. So we're not going to see wet seasons from November to May. We're going to be wet seasons. It might be like December to February, something, that they're going to be these more condensed. Robert's got his hand up. He might have some ideas on how to phrase it.
Actually, I didn't have an idea on that, but I'm just seeing quite a few acronyms, so I just want to make recommendation to use as little as possible. So like TBS, Two Basin Solution Team.
Sure.
Write it up.
We mentioned it before, but it doesn't hurt to, because people won't remember.
Right.
All right, let's say it's 2B team and leave it at that. Is there any consternation with that right there?
Any thoughts on that in the context of climate change? Even with water transfer, Lake Mendocino is likely to empty more frequently.
Sounds like we're okay.
Okay.
All right. Next up is this. There shouldn't be any consternation with this. I believe this is just correct data. I mean, obviously, if it's wrong, let me know. You'll notice that I made the bars blue because we're color coding dark blue to indicate water transfers. All right, now the next slide nobody has seen ever. It is a hypothetical slide meant to illustrate a half dozen points. Please bear with me, and I will be asking you for data, but I needed to get the illustration across. So basically, this is the colors of water: natural flows, water transfers, stored water. And the idea is that you have water transfers only in wet periods. The natural flows decrease and essentially are non-existent in the summer months. And here's a little trick, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the water that's in Lake Mendocino gets transformed from its original identity after 30 days of storage. So the natural flow that happened in January is no longer natural flow by the time mid-February rolls around. It gets converted magically into stored water. First of all, is there debate about that concept? Sounds like there isn't. Next up, as a consequence of the little table we presented a little while ago, the only thing that's flowing in the Russian in this period is stored water. And golly, wouldn't you know it, riparians do not have access to either transferred water or stored water. And most of the appropriatives don't either, unless they're either under contract to somebody or they're part of the 10,000 acre foot Sonoma County Reserve. So that concept of, oh, there might be a lot of water flowing around and a lot of water stored, but you don't get any, that is a scary concept. But is it true? Go, Glenn.
Yeah, go back a couple slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean to the pretty picture?
Yeah, that one. There you're using riparian in a different meaning than in your earlier
That's the problem.
chart.
That's the problem with reserved words.
Yeah, it's not for
Riparian,
riparian vegetation. Those are
no,
riparian,
water rights.
basically water rights, people adjacent to the river.
Correct. So why don't I clarify that?
Yeah,
And I'll fix the rest of them. You get the idea.
yeah. If we're using the word riparian in two entirely different ways, that's very
Yeah,
confusing.
we only discovered that on Monday. That's a good ad.
In that past graphic about using riparian, maybe we should use something totally different, because riparian, I think everyone's going to think of riparian water rights like streamside vegetation or something.
I would say riverside vegetation or riverside environmental, whatever we want to call it. Something, but riparian, although it's linguistically true, is just going to confuse people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like this general dangerous concept I presented doesn't have a lot of debate here.
David, did you see Don's note in the chat saying generally it is referred to as a riparian claim?
Ooh. I didn't, I don't read the chat when I'm presenting, sorry.
Okay.
So that is
Claim.
fine. That's even better in a sense that it makes a pretty big distinction. Okay, so now that we've kind of digested this, and it is not the scale, it is a hypothetical year. This is making a statement derived from the charts provided by Sonoma Water about 2021. And we can quibble about the numbers, please do, but let's do these one at a time because there's a lot going on in this slide. So is this approximately correct as far as everyone knows? Because that's what the graphic shows from Lake Sonoma, Lake Mendocino.
Thoughts on this, and also recognizing folks may need some more time to think about it. But
Yeah, of course.
just want to make sure there's
Yeah, David, I'm
Yes.
gonna need some more time to think through this and the implications on the rest of the presentation. So I'm happy to kind of hear what your thoughts are, but I need some time to look at this.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is get across the notion of time really matters, that the water you see changes color, and that in the months when there's a lot of demand, it's not the color you might expect. And so that's why there's so much going on here. Okay, so just with all of this, let's open the microphone for all that.
comments, and yeah, we can also circle back to this in future drafts if it
Yeah,
sounds
yeah, I
like
mean-
some more time to think about it would be helpful. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Robert.
Well, it seems like, even with the 37,000 feet, and then that whole, I guess like that first statement and then the next two really have to do with maintaining in-stream flows to a certain extent. And the main point is really that last bullet that in the summer months, only stored water is available. Am I right there? That's kind of what you're trying to convey?
Yeah, and I didn't want to get into the technicalities of the timing of the in-stream flows or anything else like that. We're just trying to get across a basic concept, and that we burn a lot of water in May through October, which again the general public may not know that. So some of this is going to be a big surprise.
Glenn, I see your hand up.
Yeah, you need to label as to where that is. I assume the location is at Lake Mendocino.
Thank you.
I'm not sure the natural flows diminish or go to zero elsewhere in the lower tributaries at all. I'm not at all sure that's the rule with the other tributaries. But in Lake Mendocino, I think you're pointing out that at some dry times in the year, there's little or no inflow. All that's left is the stored water.
Yep.
Good, Lake Mendocino.
No, this wouldn't be Lake Mendocino. This would be the Upper Russian River that Lake Mendocino's taxed to meet downstream demands and minimum stream flows. So
You still need to specify the location we're talking about.
I
Upper
agree. It should be down, the upper reach of the Russian River.
Okay, good.
For that matter, it's in the entire Russian River, actually, because
It's absolutely true, but it's I'm all over reducing character count. Okay, well, everyone's going to need to think about this. There may be a better way of presenting this all together. We had Jim had come up with some great schematic diagrams, but it was for the general public. I think it was too hard to digest, and even this one's going to be hard to digest. So we don't have any real-time reactions, but I'm sure that upon thinking about it, people will have more input. So
Yeah.
we'll get this out to you.
Yeah, and please send me, if you have written comments or suggestions for graphical presentations, send them to me and I can get them to the drafting team. And just want to note, there's a question that, or a note in the Q&A that on the transbasin transfer graph over time, a commenter said it would be helpful to label what these 3 distinct periods represent, i.e. what changed.
Oh, that's actually not a bad idea at all. And cool. Yes.
So thanks for that comment.
All right. We didn't discuss this one, I don't think, on Monday.
That's right.
Now, this is not talking about the scenarios. This is simply talking about the world you used to live in isn't the world you're living in now. Questions, comments? I have a comment that came in through something or other. Somebody asserted that illegal diversions were a big deal on the Russian. Do we believe that to be true, at least intuitively?
No, and we need to be really careful about kind of staying within the scope of the presentation.
So is that footnote just not worth having?
I think it's a landmine.
Any
So-
objections to deleting that note there?
I don't have an objection to deleting it because it's sort of obvious if somebody's taking more water than they're entitled to, it's jeopardy to others. But there are probably illegal transfers in both basins.
I would say that's true, but without being able to actually pinpoint who is illegally diverting. Yeah,
it's
you don't want to just infer that there's all kinds of illegal diversion.
okay. Other comments on this one? Okay. So
David, this is Mike. If you go back to that last slide, you asked
Oh,
the
sure.
question, is it effect or affect?
Oh, I always get that wrong. Where are we? Which line?
Second big.
the-
Oh, actually, in this case, I believe it's effect.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
but then-
next one is with an A though.
The next one.
Uh,
Removal of the dams will
oh,
affect.
I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong one. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David.
Is there a grammarian in the house?
Yeah, really. Ironically, my first job out of college was as a proofreader. You'd think I'd know this by now.
David, there's also just a stray asterisk on that last slide.
Random asterisk.
On the second line of text.
Right
Right
thank
after
you. Yes.
effect.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't pass the national blindness test. Okay. I don't think this will be controversial, but comments on this?
I would just say in your last bullet, actual rate, volume, and timing of transfers will be determined by, well, I think it's pretty clear it'll be determined by the resource agencies with delegated authority and likely input from the Round Valley Indian tribes.
What we
Don, this is Phil. I'm sorry. Go ahead, David. You're in response.
yeah, we'd had it a little more specific, and then we decided, we actually don't know all the items that all the players. Phil, is over to you.
Well, no, I actually wasn't responding to Don's comment.
Oh. So is it important for does this seem too vague and is important for the public to understand?
You might just take off by to be determined and just say, you know, it will be determined in the future or something like that. Still
Yeah.
to be determined. I don't.
Still
I
to
think,
be
and I
determined.
think, speaking of grammarians, I think Mr. Fowler would say to be determined, you don't need to add in the future, right? So just to be determined.
Do we want to say to be or will be? I'm easy. There.
Don,
Okay.
I wanted to ask you a question. You raised the point earlier about this use of the word transfer versus import. And so I'm just looking at the slides, and that seems to be a pervasive theme. And I just want to, I don't care. It seems to me like transfer is just kind of part of the vocabulary here. And I just want to make sure we're all comfortable with kind of changing that. It's not incorrect. In fact, it's more correct to use the word import. But if we are making that change, then we'll need to make that change. We'll need to go through it.
Absolutely.
That occurs in several parts of the slides. Don, you think that's, and I'm asking honestly, Don, you think that's worth doing?
You know, I was just pointing out, you know, how generally things are referred to, like you're aware of, Phil. And,
Right.
you know, I'm not married to anything on what it has to be, but just thinking about, you know, you interact with the State Water Resources Control Board, and they have very clear definitions of import transfer. So that was the only reason I suggested it.
I have no
Yeah, no,
problem with oh,
and
sorry.
it's a great comment. My only concern is, are we introducing confusion by changing the vocabulary? And I'm just, you know, maybe we'll take a look at what we have to do here, but
I'll change it everywhere, and then we'll change the vocabulary.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. And we've got a few hands up as well as a comment in the Q&A. Glenn, let's start with you.
Yeah, we should say if water import occurs, not when. It's still to be determined whether
Yeah,
that'll happen
fair
or
enough.
not.
Thanks, Glenn. Adrian?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to tell you that you have a comment. Did you want me to read it or you want to read it?
Yeah, I was going to read that. Adrian, was that from you or?
No, Adam.
No, okay. Yeah, sorry, I can't see who made that comment. The comment was that there is a need for breakdown of diversions by reach on the eel side. The minor effect needs to be quantified, needs quantification.
Oh, there's one in the chat. That's a different one.
Why am I
We
not seeing
don't
that?
have any
Oh, I'm sorry.
quantification. Pardon me, to respond to, we don't have any quantification. I wish we did. If people have it, please send it our way. We have holes that we need plugged.
Right. Okay. So thanks, Adrian, for flagging. And Adam, sorry, I was looking at some people are posting in the Q&A separately from the chat. So reading Adam's question was, a big question people have is how will this affect the face value of appropriative water rights? It's obvious that summertime curtailments will become more frequent. What will be the effect of winter flows if more storage, i.e. ponds and reservoirs, is developed to divert water in winter for storage? Is it possible that winter diversions could reach a point where there could be winter diversions?
Wow, all good questions, but way
Yeah, there's a
down
lot
in
of
the weeds.
questions. Yeah.
Well, and
Adam, Adam, do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's kind of obvious if someone has 100 acre feet, they can divert year round, and all of a sudden they just can't in the summer, and their season is going to effectively be gone for months out of the year, and then they decide that they just need to invest in storage. I mean, has anybody run a model where if people were diverting in wintertime, how that would affect? Would we ever hit where we would have flow so low that we would have to stop or do some kind of more managed diversion schedule of people? I mean, it already happens with frost, for example. But if people just enlarge storage to the point that they were pumping a lot more in wintertime.
those dynamics are pretty complex. And is anyone aware of any modeling along those lines?
Let's see, Justin. I see Justin just posted a response in the chat. Justin, would you like to speak to your comment here? I can also just read it. Summer flows on the lower eel have been coming up as an alleged issue for fish, including in a sigma context. Possible exacerbation of dewatering with dam removal. If a potential effect is not a water rights impact, at least directly, but should be looked at / considered.
I believe at least in the very upper reach of the eel, I believe there's some modeling work going on exactly that topic for the Round Valley tribes. I don't have access to the consultants, but they at least said, yes, something like that's going on. All good on this one?
Okay.
Okay.
And Terry, let's see. Terry, thanks for your comment here. On the Russian River side, during low rain winters, winter diversions could impact fish runs, as there are already issues during frost diversions.
Yeah,
I think,
this is
Terry,
just
that's
talking about
following
the
up
eel.
on Adam's comment, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So this is what happens to Lake Mendocino, scenario 3 versus scenario 2. And again, we'll change the wording here to make it all consistent. We don't have a change here, other than we added that. Oops, right there. I mean, sure, there's lots of things that can be done beyond curtailments, but they have to be funded.
Okay.
So Dave,
Look for hands. Go ahead, Don, please. Thanks.
so this is, I assume, is based on the results of the Huffman ad hoc modeling.
Right.
So under scenario 2, based on the assumptions that were used at that time, it was actually the lake only emptied 1 out of 111 years.
No, that was, we probably need to take this offline, but that's with PVP as it was, where it was transferring lots and lots and lots of water.
No. It was under a run of the river import.
I'll need to double check that. I may have gone to the wrong page, so I'm going to mark that. Give me just a second, because this is a pretty essential point. And where to go? Forgive me for being a PowerPoint nerd. I will double check that, I promise.
Don, this is Mike. Another question I had on this one in particular too is that run of the river assumed existing, right? But RPA flows in the eel, which we're not sure what those will be in the future. Is that correct, or we're still working those out?
No, that's correct. Those assumptions that were used under the Huffman ad hoc were that it was under the existing terms and conditions of their FERC license, which were based on the RPAs and the biological opinion. We know that's changed. I was just saying if we're just based on those results, I just was trying to correct how many years Lake Mendocino emptied.
Yeah, and I guess, David, one of the things to point out there is that it would be good to note that these numbers are being updated.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good, because I don't want to give the wrong impression.
Yeah, we're not only being updated, but we suspect the results are going to change.
Yeah.
And then there was some noise about this.
Yeah.
And we do have, I now have taken a look at the work that was done back in 2021. It's pretty vague as far as what we can conclude out of those reports. But is it will we be able to say anything conclusive even with the new modeling that's going on?
So, Sonoma Water and the State Water Resources Control Board have been partnering with the USGS since 2017, developing a GS flow model of the watershed coupled with ModSim. That model is not yet available. It's nearly available, but it's a coupled surface water groundwater model of the entire basin. And it'll when it can be released by the USGS, it'll definitely be a tool that can better understand impacts of depletion of surface water and how it by groundwater pumping.
Yeah, my feeling is that that bullet point doesn't belong on this slide. I mean, it says impacts on Lake Mendocino. It seems like that's more related to maybe riparian rights or groundwater surface water interaction. Seems like it should be on a different slide.
I'll fix the wording, but the idea is to say Lake Mendocino is to say the Russian water supply during the summer. So hopefully, because I don't want to, we already have way too many slides, and hopefully this isn't too complicated.
Good. Check for any other thoughts that folks have on the inclusion of that point in this slide. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for the discussion.
And then, so this is scenario 2, which is the water transfer continuing. We're probably going to take this out, but we'll leave the pretty picture. And this is sneaky. We need to communicate something, but I don't believe water shortage has a technical definition. And we don't want to say curtailments because we don't know whether a curtailment will be thrown. What can we say, or what should we be meaningfully saying, well, every once in a while there might be a little bit of an issue, but it's not overwhelming.
All right, Adam, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention it. I'm on the board of Roder Valley County Water District, and our water use is substantially lower now. I mean, primarily during the drought, we don't have a direct contract for water with flood control, so we didn't have any water at all for about 2 years until this year. And all of our domestic water was coming from groundwater from Millview Water District during that time period, and we had no ag water. And this year we do now, but even what it looks like we're going to end up using this year between ag and domestic is only going to be about 700 acre feet total for the year. And we're still getting some groundwater from Millview, which I don't know those numbers, but I don't really anticipate. People have gotten so used to not having water. I don't think we're ever going, even if we had water available, which I also doubt we ever will have that much water available again. I don't think we are ever going to use 2,000 acre feet.
So, and water shortage also implies it's water shortage everywhere, and different districts will face very, very different constraints.
Yeah.
Maybe the better thing to do is simply leave out the quantification, because first of all, we don't have a technical definition of water shortage, and it's so vague that. So does anyone have I would imagine no one has a problem removing the quantification because it's iffy anyway.
Yeah,
And Adrian has a hand up here too. Yeah.
I was just gonna suggest maybe we think about occasional unreliable summertime water, because we don't know.
Unreliable implies a lot of different things. Right, it could be available but have too many chemicals in it, that sort of thing. So well, let's play with this.
Yeah.
But I think taking out the quantification, I don't think anyone has a problem with. Adam, do you still have another point? Or is that a legacy hand?
Oh, well, actually, I do kind of have, I mean, something that's going to affect, I guess, the municipal users is just the state's proposed mandate to cut all urban water suppliers down to whatever, 44 gallons per person per day.
Yeah, that's
So even if there is water available, their usage is just going to be forced to go down if the proposed order is adopted.
right, right. So how cold is in time? Is that close to getting adopted? As in, during the life of this presentation, let's say the next 6 or 8 months, are they likely to rule on that?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the deadline.
Okay.
I know public comment or one round of public comment just ended yesterday.
Okay. All right. Doesn't seem we have other points here. Now this is with the, oh, yes.
There is another
Oh, sorry.
in the
Yeah.
chat from Anne Marie. Do you mean occasionally summertime demand exceeds supply?
That's what a water shortage would be.
There you go. New verbiage.
So we need to be consistent about what words we use, and let's take that into the drafting team. Okay, now that was with continuing water transfer. Now what happens without any water transfer?
So thoughts on in particular on the text on the right here, which is explaining the implications of the no water transfer, no water import scenario.
And again, this is only talking about the upper Russian reaches.
All right, any suggestions here?
And I have a technical question. Maybe Sam can answer this. In point of fact, the curtailments didn't start in 2019. I think it was only in 2021. Is that correct? Is Sam still here?
It looks like
He may have gotten
Sam
off.
Sam had to drop off. Yep.
Okay.
So we were curtailed in 21 and 22.
That's what I thought. So even though the drought was longer, that's not what matters.
Right.
Okay.
And then there's a question from Terry. Were the curtailed water rights holders able to purchase water from the flood control district?
I don't know, but
we ran the water sharing program in 2022, but there was no program in 2021.
now the water sharing program, did that purchase water from the flood control district?
No. Well,
okay.
What that did, the people who signed up for that program, in the senior water rights holders who weren't curtailed could then forbear part of their water. And that created a pool of water for the junior users who were curtailed to share. I don't think we want to get into all of that.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. The
right.
lower
right. David, sorry, we had Adam.
I'm sorry.
Adam, that's a new hand from you.
Yeah, I was just going to say for flood control in that year, because the farm I work on, we have a contract. A lot of people already over contract, basically as insurance. I think it basically ended up working out. I don't know if there was any transfers. I mean, Beth would have the answer, but I think people pretty much just cut back because they knew we had to cut back.
And as I understand it, the tribes also were really good in cutting back very severely.
Other points on this? Yeah. David, I think that Mendocino Flood may have provided some health and safety water, but Beth would know that.
Well, that's the definition of a curtailment, that the health and safety water is still allowed.
Well, right, but
No, that's not
There-
correct, right?
yeah.
That's not the definition of curtailment.
Well, then we need to go back and when we talk about curtailment, fix that. Because let's put it this way. The verbiage from the State Water Board said you're curtailed with the exception of health and safety.
right, but you have to apply for that.
Yeah, I
the
did.
State board. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay,
well, there's
okay.
a lot of nuances and we can't put those all in slides. This would go on forever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I've flagged that we should revisit the curtailment language to make sure we get the definition clear up front.
Okay. Now the Lower Russian, and we're going to take out this. And I would love it for someone to confirm that for all intents and purposes, the supply of Lake Sonoma is not available to water right holders on this reach. That supply is used here. And even if you're right here, you don't have a right to use it. Is that a true statement?
That's correct, David. Sonoma Water has the only authorized water right to redivert water released from Lake Sonoma.
Cool.
Thanks, Don.
Other questions, comments?
There may be, but I'll have to check.
So one of the things that is counterintuitive, or it will be to the audience, that even though there's this huge amount of water here, the situation on the Lower Russian can actually be just as severe as the Upper Russian, even with the tributaries, I should say.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands.
Okay. And then in the case of scenario 3, which is no transfer. And actually, this is 2.
And then change the years.
Yeah, I will. We'll have to figure out how to say this, but you'll get the idea that yeah, there might be flow in here, but it's not yours.
David, instead of stating it as a negative, you could say Lake Sonoma water only available.
Ooh,
Sonoma
thank
water.
you. Much better. Do we need to bother to say for its customers? I don't think we do.
And then if Lake Mendocino runs low, causing water shortages, would that be maybe Don in the Upper Russian River?
No, I mean, in the Lower Russian River, all those water rights are dependent on either natural flow or Potter Valley Project water. And so if that's not, I mean, or if they're part of the 10,000 acre foot reservation, it's water stored in Lake Mendocino. But as I said, there's no authorized, other than folks that might have there's 1 or 2 agencies that have water supply agreements with Sonoma Water. There's no other water rights that have access to water that's been rediverted out of Lake Sonoma storage. Or
Got
really
that.
into storage.
Got that. So we'll need to fiddle with this, with the wording of this. Well, I think the point's taken. We'll do the wordsmithing later, if that's okay.
Yeah, and again, if there are any suggestions for wording about how best to describe the impact of a no water import situation, please send that text to me and I can forward it.
Yep. Any other hand raises? Okay. And this is the last slide of the deck.
I would just say on that last bullet in severe droughts, I would say curtailments may happen on the Russian River. I mean, during that 2021 period where the state board curtailed everybody, that was under emergency regulations.
Yep.
Without those emergency regulations, their authorities are constrained.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that does anybody have any idea what happens if there isn't a state water emergency, yet we need to do something? Who it would be, the state water board or somebody else that can do that something?
The answer is the state water board has the ability to curtail the unlawful use of water, but water right holders can also bring trespass actions against those who are diverting water, against those who are diverting what the petitioner would say is their water.
So basically, you get to go to court.
Or the state water board, right?
Yeah.
Whereas under the emergency regulations, the water right holder didn't have those, wasn't able to do what Phil just said. So the state board needs those emergency orders and to do those blanket curtailments, as opposed to the water right holders being able to challenge the state board.
Got it.
So as you can imagine, trying to curtail 1,800 water right holders and then having to have them all challenge you would be make it pretty difficult to actually curtail anybody.
Get anything done, yeah. Are there any other points from the presentation? First of all these points have been made during the presentation. There's nothing that sort of comes out of the blue as a surprise. Is there one more point we need to make here? Or have we basically captured what people need to walk away with?
On that first bullet, the riparian water rights, is that speaking to riparian water rights in both basins, or is this just the Eel River?
It's meant to be both, because riparians don't have much access to the water. They only get natural flow anyway. So the natural flow is the natural flow, and the PVP or not, diversion or not, will not affect them. They didn't have access to that water anyway.
Yeah, I might recommend just separating those for clarity. And then for riparian water rights holders in the Russian River, though that may be true legally, I think in practice it does have an impact, because people actually start caring about riparian diversions when there's limited flow in the river.
So you're saying they change their behavior, or they just start pumping illegally?
Well, I think they are probably pumping illegally often during wet years, even when there's limited natural flow, but there's no concern about that because there's ample water in the system. So
what should we be adding as the wrinkle here? A wrinkle being a sub-bullet. I'm not quite sure what to say about that.
I don't know. I guess it's a nuance. Maybe it's more like, technically speaking, riparian water rights holders don't have it. There's no change in availability. But in practice, I don't know if we want to get into it. It does seem like it will affect riparian water rights holders, though.
Oh yeah, but legalistically, no. You never.
Yeah.
We understand you overpumped, but that's not our. You never had that right to that anyway. So
any other? Yeah, just wanted. Any other questions on this point or comments on how to treat this issue?
The only one I would say is, and more of a general comment is, to the extent that we keep the comments like known, subjective, objective, and really linked to legal water rights. I think the better, and not. And like I said, and because this is the water rights working group, and I think Dave has really done a great job of pulling a lot of information together. But again, making sure it stays. I think it's better just to keep with the focus on the water rights, and there may be other behaviors people engage in, but I don't think I don't know. I don't think there should be a ton of that type of recognition of those behaviors in this document, and try to keep it as factual as possible.
Yeah, I mean, even if we intuitively feel it's true, it's speculation.
Exactly. You put it much better.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So there's also a comment from Pam in the chat that in the last bullet, she suggests changing owning to holding a Russian River water right.
Sure.
And Glenn, I see your hand up.
Yeah, when you talk in the middle bullet and the number 2, transfer receipts, water shortages will be quite frequent. We don't know what quite means, how frequent, whether they're not quantified. I think
That's absolutely true. We don't.
It would be safe to say it may be more frequent.
Well, according to the model, there's no may about it.
The model again assumes no mitigation measures to take other than what is already status quo.
Absolutely true, but we have to assume what the model
Well,
assumes.
what does quite frequent mean? If you have a number.
Oh, we don't.
56 out of 111 years, Glenn.
That's back tested, and with climate change, it ain't going to get better. We just don't know how much worse.
Yeah, and again, the model has to be vetted in a variety of ways, but I just don't like the vagueness of the word, the subjectivity of the word quite.
That's a good point. I just want to make it clear, Glenn, the model was validated and vetted during the Huffman ad hoc through a technical advisory committee and through the ad hoc itself. So the modeling.
Yes, I understand. And the model also has some assumptions that may or may not be true.
Can I maybe offer somewhat of just for consideration, is that it might just more concise that continued transfers would reduce the magnitude and intensity of water shortages?
That would be acceptable to me, yeah.
So but that's scenario 2.
It actually covers both of them in a way. It's that, so you could say if transfers continues, quote, in scenario 2, the magnitude and frequency of water shortages would be less, or you could put significantly less or something in there, but that would be a way just to have a single bullet covering both.
Would be.
Yeah, and remember, we're only talking about 33,000 acre feet. It's hard to say that is going to make a, quite frequent difference.
I think it will. It's a huge difference.
I know you do.
It's on. The problem is it's right on the margin, and
huge difference.
Every acre foot counts.
Yeah. But okay, so I guess, Dave, what I'm saying is maybe just have one.
Yeah, I gotcha.
That covers both of them. So
we'll hammer this out.
That's great. Right. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for that suggestion.
And then any other comments in the chat or anywhere else?
Not seeing anything in the chat or in the Q&A. And David, this is our last slide, right?
Except just wanted to let you know, we have references out to Yin Yang. I'll include the references for the Supreme Court case. So we have pointers where we can get pointers. And other than that, it's all URLs. I mean, it's all just descriptive. We don't know where to find it, but there's a document you can go find.
I always like citing the source. That's good.
Yep. So I think, this is the last slide. Let me hand the microphone back, and Jim, take it from there.
Yeah, I just want to pause here before we wrap up to see if there's any additional feedback, perhaps of a general nature.
Jim, I'll just, add, and I'm sorry, I joined late, so I think and you all may have already fixed, addressed this, but I know some of the earlier slides, and again, those might have been cleaned up. I think there were cases where there were kind of facts and estimates and and some kind of like interpretation kind of blended together. And you guys may have worked that out, but that is, I'll look forward to seeing the next draft, but I thought there was some cleanup that needed in what I'd call it, in the blending of facts, estimates, and interpretation. But you guys may have already cleaned that up.
And you just volunteered to review the whole deck.
Okay. Well, and on David, on that side, I'm like, if you want, yeah, I'm happy to, we can chat afterwards.
That's great. Thank you.
That'd be great.
Yeah, great.
I
Thanks
just
for that,
wanted
Mike.
to thank David
Adrian.
for his efforts in
Absolutely.
creating this. It's a great.
Yes.
great.
I'd like to second that, because David, I mean, I'm the same thing. It's always the hardest thing to do is to create the initial draft and create the initial content, and then it can be massaged, reduced, all that, but the lift you did just to get the initial content out, like it was really impressive. So thank you for doing that.
Likewise, yeah.
And thank you all for your patience with me. There are times when I am wonderful and easy to work with, and times when I'm not. And I appreciate your patience.
Brenda has her hand up. Oh.
Yeah, Brenda, please go ahead.
I was actually not trying to raise my hand. I was
Oh.
trying to do the little,
That
I
is
was
the
trying to do the
applause.
little
Yes.
clapping emoji,
Yeah,
but it wasn't
right.
coming out.
You had the clapping emoji also.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, just to wrap up here, we have the planning group meeting is currently scheduled for 2 weeks from this Thursday, 2 weeks from tomorrow, on November 2nd. And the current plan is to present the next version of this work product. Probably given the amount of time it takes to get the whole thing, we may do that selectively, but we're sort of considering how to present it at the planning group meeting, given time constraints. And then the next meeting of the full water rights working group is November 13th. And we will post notes and recording and the slides from today's presentation as soon as we can, as soon as we get them together, hopefully by the end of this week. Any procedural questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, one procedural
Glenn.
question. Some of the slides we looked at last time needed some additional information. I volunteered to provide some of that, but who do I send it to?
You can send it to me, Glenn. I will pass it on.
Okay.
Great. Yes, and again, any suggestions on graphics or wording, very welcome, and please send those to me and I'll pass them on.
Okay. Jim, just something for consideration too, and thanks with regard to the planning group. This is, like I said, this is a lot of information, and I think the folks on the working group, we've been, I think we've been kind of immersed and coming along with this. It might consider presenting this information over a couple meetings, because it might be a little bit too much to digest, all at one shot. Might be a little overwhelming, so to speak. And so we might think in terms of what, looking at the next version of the slides, and are there some natural like breakpoints to help bring people along on all of this information, because it's a lot, and it's really it's a lot.
One thing we'd considered, and I want to get people's input on this, one thing we could do is that we do the selective, here are the top 5 or 6 slides, that can be gotten through in a reasonable hour, and then having the entire thing done as a video presentation, not shared with anybody except the planning group, so that if they have the patience, they can actually sit through the whole hour. And in that way, giving people a way of seeing the big picture, but also being able to comment on the things that are likely to matter.
Yeah. Like David, I think that's a really good idea. I think that's worth pursuing.
Because if you think of what it takes just to schedule a planning group meeting, it's getting that number of people, that gaggle together. It's just tough.
Right.
Okay. That's good. Noted that suggestion. Any final comments before we wrap up? Right. Well, thanks everyone for the good discussion in this extra session. Really appreciate all your comments. And again, please find me with any questions.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you all for your time.
I know for the few of you who've really leaned into this, thank you all.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks all.